few weeks ago, we confronted Labour's Trade Minister over his arms exports to Israel. Minister Reynolds, why are you still allowing arms exports to Israel?
We have
Our British
already
fighter
made measures
jets
on
are
that.
being used to kill children in Gaza, sir. Do you have blood on your hands, Minister Reynolds? He's now been taken to court over that policy, and I'm joined by a lawyer at the heart of the case and my colleague John McAvoy, who's been relentlessly investigating this issue. John and Charlotte, great to have you with us. Charlotte, could you tell us about the fighter jet that's at the centre of this case, where Britain supplies so many spare parts for, and the kind of impact that it's been having in Gaza?
Absolutely. So the F-35, Britain currently gives components for the F-35, which is a fighter jet which drops 2,000-pound bombs on hospitals, refugee camps. The government will tell you that their contribution to F-35s, Israel's F-35s, is small, but that's just not made out on the facts. Every single F-35 in operation globally is 15% British made, and also outside of the US, the UK is the largest contributor to Israel's spare parts pool for F-35s. That's really important because F-35s need a huge amount of maintenance to keep going. So the summary of all of that is basically to say that if Britain stopped exporting British parts for F-35s, Israel would have to ground one of its most important warplanes. And it's notable that, for example, the UN has said that Israel's use of these multi-tonne bombs is emblematic of clear violations of international humanitarian law.
And you've been saying in the court submissions that Israel has modified this F-35. It's supposed to be a stealth plane, but because they're using it in Gaza where there's no air defences or rival air force, they've been able to do what's called beast mode, where they put these huge bombs under the wings, not inside the kind of stealth area of the fuselage. So I think that just gives some sense of just how this weapon is being used against the civilian population of Gaza. Now, John, you've been in court today following some of this case. What's been the most surprising thing for you?
I think there's been two incredibly surprising things that have come out of court today and over the previous week. Now, the first one is the weakness of the UK government's legal arguments when it comes to F-35 shipments. What seems like their main kind of expert witness testimony is from somebody called Keith Bethel. Now, he's an official in the Ministry of Defence, a former RAF Air Marshal, and now he's basically laid out the justification for why the UK government should continue to contribute F-35 spare parts to global pools which supply Israel. Now, what he effectively says is it wouldn't be possible for the F-35 programme to continue if the UK stopped supplying spare parts for it. Yet he's simultaneously saying that, Israel's use of UK-made F-35 components is minimal, while simultaneously also conceding that there are several parts that are exclusively manufactured in the UK. Now, these are fundamentally contradictory terms, right? There cannot be parts that are exclusively manufactured in the UK, yet Israel's F-35s are unlikely to contain UK-made F-35 components, right? I mean, this is a fundamental contradiction in terms. So Keith Bethel's expert witness testimony has been very much relied on by the government and the government's lawyers in court. Now, what we found at Declassified in an article that we've just published today is that Keith Bethel has seemingly quite close relations with many of the key UK and international arms firms that contribute to the F-35 global supply chain. So just last year, he accepted hospitality from Lockheed Martin, which is the kind of prime contractor in the global consortium that produces F-35s. He also went to Elbit Systems' opening of its Filton factory in 2023, alongside the Israeli ambassador in London, Tzipi Hartaveli. He's also accepted hospitality from BAE Systems, which we know contributes the rear tail to the F-35 fighter jets. As Andrew Feinstein, an arms trade expert, told Declassified in response to this story, that officials, if they want to be perceived as neutral and objective, then they shouldn't be accepting hospitality and dinners from the arms industry that they're supposedly giving evidence neutrally on. I mean, it seems like there's a potential serious conflict of interest there.
The UK government lawyers are strongly denying evidence of war crimes and genocide in Gaza. Charlotte, can you tell us a bit more about that aspect of the government's case? I mean, some of these submissions look like they could have been written by UK lawyers for Israel. It's so stark what they're saying.
We would say that the government's findings are quite shocking. So the UK government has assessed that there is no serious risk of genocide, and in part it's based that conclusion on its statement that they have seen no evidence of deliberate targeting of women and children. This is just absolutely a falsity. even if we look at its own evidence, so those research reports compiled by the Centre for Information Resilience, we see videos of a grandmother walking with her grandson with a white flag and being sniped and killed. We see evidence of children being shot in both feet. We as Al-Haq have filed a huge amount of evidence, including first-hand crime-based evidence from journalists who were sniped and had to have a leg amputated whilst wearing a press jacket, whilst reporting, and a doctor, for example, who says that the vast majority of children that he treated, the vast majority of patients that he treated were children, and, for example, that he consistently was seeing kids being shot in the heart, and in his words, so precisely that he couldn't have put his stethoscope more precisely on their heart. So for the government to say that they haven't seen evidence of deliberate targeting of women and children is just farcical, we say.
The other most surprising thing that I've heard in court today is there was a broad discussion on what kind of information is fed into the Foreign Office's International Humanitarian Law Compliance Assessment Cell, I believe it's called. And they take various forms of evidence, from the ICC, the ICJ, NGOs, from the Foreign Office, from British embassies across the world. Now, one of the areas that they are apparently not taking evidence from is the RAF spy flights, which are going over Gaza on a daily basis. Now, following work that we've done at Declassified, we know that the UK government and the RAF has amassed thousands of hours of footage, of spy footage over Gaza. Yet in previous Foreign Affairs Select Committees, we've heard from the Foreign Office that they haven't even requested to see this evidence from the RAF spy flights. Now, we also heard the government's lawyer say today, this is not our war. Now, presumably, if hypothetically Britain was attacked by Iran and the Russians were overflying with spy flights on a day-to-day basis, I would suspect that the British government would perceive Russia to be a party to that war. Yet the UK government's lawyers are saying we're not a party to the war and therefore we cannot, collate evidence other than, open source evidence. Well, this is factually incorrect. The government doesn't need to rely on open source evidence. They have thousands of hours of footage from spy flights over Gaza.
And Charlotte, part of your case is about the Genocide Convention and the grounds that the UK shouldn't be exporting weapons to Israel while it's committing a genocide in Gaza. How have the government responded to that point?
So the government say that they have assessed that there is no serious risk of genocide, which we say is an untenable position, just on the basis that, there are 3 rulings by the International Court of Justice implementing provisional measures in respect of the Palestinians' right not to be subjected to genocide. But more than that, every competent court that has ruled on this has found there to be a serious risk of genocide. Every international body, UN body, the UN Commission of Inquiry on Palestine has found genocide. Human Rights Watch, Amnesty, genocidal acts. We just say that it's just an untenable position for them to maintain. But it's also important to note that we actually don't have to make out the serious risk of genocide in order for our case to succeed. There are so many areas of international law that we say have been breached. For example, the Arms Trade Treaty, the Genocide Conventions, the Articles on State Responsibility, and the Genocide Conventions. Things like this are really fundamental core foundations of international law. So even while we say that the assessment on serious risk of genocide is untenable, it's just one of many factors that we say is also untenable.
And are you expecting a verdict at the end of this week on the case, or what will be the next step?
No, the court will reserve judgment, and normally a judgment could take a number of months. It might be faster given that the court has acknowledged the need for expedition, just given the horrific numbers of people that are dying every day. If we win, what will happen is, because we would win on the grounds that there has been some kind of procedural error in the decision making, and so what would happen is that the court would quash the order, rendering it of no legal effect, and the government would be forced to make its own decision again in a lawful manner.
Thanks, Charlotte. We'll keep covering this case very closely. Thanks for watching this video. If you want to read John's latest articles, head to our website, declassifieduk.org, where you can also join us from £3 a month to support our work. Please share this video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching.